Within the same month, the University of Arizona found itself at the center of two legal dilemmas, both filed by women, separately making harassment and discrimination claims. A brief timeline of the two. The first stems from allegations made by a former assistant against fired football coach Rich Rodriguez. She accuses Rodriguez of sexual assault and harassment, which he denies. Late last month, she filed a second notice of claim seeking $8.5 million against the U of A, Rodriguez, and his wife. A notice of claim is a precursor to a lawsuit. The U of A has until early March to respond, or she can file a lawsuit after that. A few days later, a former U of A honors dean sued the Arizona Board of Regents, claiming systematic discrimination against female deans at the university. Patricia McCorkadale accuses U of A officials of paying her less than her male colleagues and calls out former U of A provost Andrew Comrie for not acting on her complaints. She wants the court to force the U of A to adjust the pay for female deans to match what their male colleagues make. To explore the issues facing the university, we asked labor attorney Don Awerkamp the process for coming forward with these types of cases. He's not involved with either of these cases. However, his law firm has frequently helped U of A employees with discrimination-related claims. Oftentimes, it's not what you know, it's what you can prove.
Especially in sexual harassment cases, because oftentimes there's no one else there other than the two people involved. So you never really are able to get easy evidence in those cases. But sometimes you get 5 or 6 women saying, yeah, he did the same thing to me or something similar to me.
Do cases like these, employment cases or cases of harassment in the workplace, do they have a capacity to impact culture once these things have gone through litigation or seen their day in court?
I think gradually things are changing. I think when I first started, men that were doing this were doing it largely because they were stupid and because they saw everybody do it. I mean, it was very common. And now I think it's more a problem of people having enough power that they think it doesn't matter if it's wrong, I've got more power and I'm not going to take advantage of it. And that's a more serious situation, I think. Gradually people are going to realize that women have power too, and they can fight back. And actually, it's not just women that are victims of these kinds of things. Sometimes men are. I've had male clients that were sexually harassed by other males or by women.
This day and age when so many women are coming forward, men and women I should say, are coming forward with concerns about what's taking place in their workplace environment, what sorts of advice would you give people who are questioning, you know, have I been wronged or am I just upset about something that I don't think was fair?
Well, there's a lot of things that people do that are wrong that the victim really can't do much about. And then the question comes, how bad is it? Sometimes when women complain about it, they get retaliated against and get terminated even for complaining about sexual harassment, or even just telling the guy that you need to leave me alone, I don't like that, or that kind of thing. So yeah, then they need to do something more about it.
As we've seen with legal filings and cases, it's often the most salacious allegations that dominate the headlines. And that's for journalists to decide how much detail to publish when they don't necessarily have all the facts. Susan Swanberg is a former attorney and teaches media law at the U of A School of Journalism. Here's what she had to say about the ethics that should drive these decisions. What's listed in a lawsuit or notice of claim, considered public record, public document, therefore fair game for the press.
Fair game for the press in that it's there to be reported on, but the press also needs to remember that those at that point are allegations and not necessarily the ultimate truth. You can use those documents as an initial source and then do some other footwork and find out what the people behind those allegations are reporting.
Oftentimes lawsuits can have a lot of emotion behind them. So there are things in there that might not be relevant for the average person to know. But in newsrooms, we make that decision to go on ahead and publish it. What sorts of discussions take place when we're thinking about what's relevant, what's not?
The SPJ Ethical Code does help us. That's the Society of Professional Journalists. And there are 4 pillars of that code. One is to report the truth, find and report the truth. Another is to act independently. And a third is to be accountable and accurate. The fourth is basically to avoid unnecessary harm. And again, I'm paraphrasing. And that gives us a lot of information. In other words, if you have, say, a vulnerable person, say the allegations perhaps focus on maybe a public figure, but also involve a child of that public figure, a vulnerable person who does not know how to interact in the legal journalistic world. Journalists are required to take extra care that they don't violate that person's privacy.
There are often very salacious things in lawsuits that are published, everyone else is doing it, and then maybe a case gets thrown out. Can we talk about defamation?
Well, yes, defamation is really a concern, and one of the concerns is it a public figure that you're speaking of a private party? But let's say those allegations involved another person who was not a public figure. Let's say there are salacious allegations of child abuse. You would want to take greater care with the victim. Or with sexual harassment, you would want to take great care that if you expose the victim, that was with the victim's consent and agreement. So those are some of the issues that can pop up.
As journalists, we are tasked with a heavy duty.
Yes.
What are your words of advice for your students who are stepping into this world? And it's changing, especially with the advent of social media.
Well, you have to be fierce as a journalist and find the truth and report it, but you also need to minimize harm where it's appropriate. And I don't mean minimize harm if someone is corrupt and you're reporting on corruption, because of course it would harm someone for those to be exposed. I'm talking about harming the vulnerable, the people whose voices are not always heard, who could suffer harm. So I advise my students to get that information, but vet it within whatever organization you're working for.
Ethics, it seems, can mean different things for different folks. So who's really the gatekeeper?
That's a very good point, and I should note that the ethical code of which I spoke earlier, the Society of Professional Journalists, is not binding. It's advisory. Journalists do not have licenses as doctors and lawyers do, so there's no disciplinary process by which they can have a license removed. However, if you do not perform well in your job and you don't report accurately, there are consequences. Most journalists, I think, want to be ethical people. I think that we've taken a lot of slams recently that are undeserved, and I think part of discussions like this is it presents a good opportunity to reinforce the fact that ethics are important.